All right, let's set the scene. It's the late 1980s and you're in the Eastern Bloc. For 40 years, the official party line has been that they're building this perfect paradise on Earth. But behind that curtain, the truth was starting to spill out. The whole system was basically finished. You see, these communist states were being propped up by huge loans from Western banks, and there was just no way they could ever pay them back. They were, to put it simply, completely and utterly broke.
So, over in Hungary, the ruling party had no clue what to do. They were panicking. So they did something pretty unexpected. They turned to this guy, Miklos Nemeth, a young 40-year-old economist. And just like that, he's the new prime minister. Now you'd think he'd be flattered, right? But no. Instead, he just felt totally and completely alone.
I mean, he was handed a job that was basically impossible. Nobody, and I mean nobody, expected him to last. He had zero friends in the party leadership, and everybody knew the whole system was a dead end. His one mission, his only mission, was to somehow save the country from total financial collapse.
So, what's the very first thing an economist does when they get a job like that? Well, they open the books. Nemeth started digging into the national budget, just going through it line by line, like a forensic accountant. And that's when he stumbled on something really strange. Buried deep in the Home Ministry's budget was this huge amount of money, all hidden under a special code name.
It turned out that money was for one thing: maintaining Hungary's 240-kilometer electric fence on the border with Austria. In other words, the Iron Curtain. Now, this thing was supposed to be high-tech, right? It could detect anyone trying to cross, it would set off signals, even fire rockets. It was the pride and joy of the border troops. But here's the kicker: it was failing. And this just perfectly shows the problem they were in. To fix it, they needed Western technology, which meant they needed hard currency, the one thing Hungary just didn't have. So in this moment of pure pragmatism, Nemeth did something absolutely astonishing. He just erased it. He deleted the line item from the budget. Gone.
Yeah, you can bet a move like that did not go unnoticed. Pretty soon, the Minister of Defense calls him in for a meeting. He takes Nemeth into an elevator, but here's the thing: it didn't go up. It went down, deep, deep into the basement of the ministry building, into a secret room filled with maps. And what the minister showed him in that room? Well, it changed everything.
On a table in that room were two handwritten books, one in Russian and one in Hungarian, and inside, the biggest secret of them all. Nemeth discovered that way back in the 1970s, the party had made a secret deal with Brezhnev to put Soviet nuclear warheads on Hungarian soil. This was a fundamental lie, a lie they had been telling the entire nation for decades. After showing him this, they forced Nemeth to sign a document, swearing him to secrecy. He later said he just felt this profound sense of depression. Can you imagine the weight of that? The realization that the entire system he was now supposed to be leading was built on a foundation of pure deceit. It was a crushing blow. It just proves you absolutely cannot build a society on lies. So with this dark secret just weighing on his mind, he has to get on a plane and fly to Moscow to meet the people who were the real rulers of his country. And as he's on that plane, he remembers being just a little boy during the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, listening on his grandfather's radio as the prime minister begged the world for help right before Soviet tanks rolled in and crushed them. He knew exactly what Moscow was capable of.
This trip also brought back this really powerful piece of advice he'd gotten from his father. See, when Nemeth joined the Communist Party as a young man, his dad was so disappointed that he didn't speak to him for 6 months. But later, when he became prime minister, his father wrote him a letter with one simple instruction: never forget where you come from, tell the truth to the people and to the world.
The difference he found in Moscow was just night and day. His meeting with the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev was actually positive. Gorbachev was different. There were no big communist hugs and kisses, just a firm handshake and a real conversation. Nemeth left feeling like he actually had a silent supporter. But that support, it stopped right there. At a later meeting of the Warsaw Pact, the hardline leaders from East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and Romania just laid into Hungary's reforms. They called him a disease and were basically demanding that Gorbachev use military force to crush them. And then, by the summer of 1989, a whole new crisis popped up, one that nobody saw coming. Thousands and thousands of East German citizens who were supposedly just on holiday in Hungary were suddenly refusing to go back home. What started as a small trickle of people was rapidly turning into an absolute flood. This was a massive humanitarian disaster just waiting to happen.
I mean, picture it. Campsites are overflowing. You've got people living in tents on the side of the road with no water, no facilities. And with the cold weather just around the corner, Hungary was facing the very real possibility of having 100,000 refugees freezing to death over the winter. So Nemeth was completely trapped. He was stuck in this impossible situation. Option 1, he couldn't keep them. Hungary just didn't have the resources. Option 2, he couldn't send them back. For years, Hungary had been forced to put these people on special planes chartered by the Stasi, sending them back to prison. He couldn't do that anymore, not with 100,000 people. So what was left? What was the only option on the table, no matter how unthinkable it seemed?
And then, an opportunity just sort of presented itself. Some local activists organized this event called the Pan-European Picnic. It was just a small celebration happening right on the border between Austria and Hungary. And for a few hours, a gate in the Iron Curtain was going to be opened. Nemeth realized, wait a minute, this is it. This is the perfect chance to test the waters, to see just how tolerant the Soviet Union would really be.
Word got out to the East German refugees about this picnic. Nemeth's government sent a secret order to the border troops. If you see any Germans, just let them pass. Do not intervene. So, during the picnic, hundreds of them seized the moment and just ran across the border to freedom. Nemeth spent that entire day in his office, nervously sitting by the phone just waiting for the angry call from the Soviet ambassador. But the call never came.
Things were moving so incredibly fast. In June, you have the symbolic defiance of reburying the heroes of the '56 revolution. In July, you have the threats from the other Warsaw Pact leaders. In August, you had that crucial test at the Pan-European Picnic. And then, just 3 days after that picnic, Nemeth called a secret meeting to make a final, irreversible decision.
Now, the risk here was immense. Nemeth knew that the hardliners back in Moscow were just looking for any excuse to get rid of Gorbachev. A move like this could be exactly what they needed. But in that meeting on August 22nd, he remembered the shame he felt having to send people back to the Stasi. And he made the call. In one simple sentence, he just said it. We are opening up.
Right away, he sent his foreign minister on a secret helicopter flight to a castle near Bonn to tell the West German Chancellor Helmut Kohl in person. When Kohl heard the news that Hungary was about to open its border for all East Germans, he was just stunned into silence. At first, he literally didn't believe it. And then, as the reality of it finally sank in, this big, powerful man, he was close to tears.
And just like that, it was done. A 40-year-old economist, given a job nobody wanted, made a single, courageous decision. A decision based on economics, on morality, and on a huge gamble on one man in Moscow. Hungary had just pulled the very first brick out of the Berlin Wall. And it really makes you wonder, right? What happens when a wall built on nothing but lies, finally starts to crumble?